I realized that a lot of my friends didn't show up for class on Monday. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to do our read aloud one more time, just so in case you saw that you missed the assignment, that you could actually be caught up with us. So on Monday, we have read a story called Fireflies by Julie Brinklow. And in this story, it helps us understand how to make our writing stronger by using certain words. Fireflies. On a summer evening, I looked up from dinner through the open window to the backyard. So on here, you can notice that they told us exactly what time of day it was, summer evening, and that he was eating dinner and the window was open. So all of these words help us to understand a little bit more about what was going on during the story. It was growing dark. My tree house was a black shape in the tree, and I wouldn't go up there now. But something flickered there a moment. I looked and it was gone. Ooh, so that was one of the words that we talked about, flickered. Flickered is when something turns on and off. Sometimes our lights might flicker. It flickered again over near the fence. Fireflies. Don't let your dinner get cold, said Mama. And got some dialogue in there as well. I forked the meat and corn and potatoes into my mouth. Forked. That's a really good verb. When it says I forked, it meant that he took his fork and he scooped up the meat and corn and potatoes all in one section of his fork and shoved it into his mouth. Please, may I go out? The fireflies. Mama smiled and Daddy nodded. Go ahead, they said. I ran from the table down to the cellar to find a jar. I knew where to look, behind the stairs. So remember that when you say I ran, that tells us a little bit of emotion. I know that he's either excited or he's scared, but because he was forking his food to get it all into his mouth, I know that he is excited. The jars were dusty, so there's another little tidbit for us. We can imagine a jar that has dust on it. And I polished one clean on my shirt. So you can see as he's going up the stairs, you can picture him taking his shirt and cleaning the top of it. Then I ran back up 2 steps at a time. So he must have been really excited to go 2 steps at a time. Holes, I remembered, so they can breathe, and as quietly as I could. That's important to know, quietly. He didn't want to get caught doing this. So she wouldn't catch me doing them. I poked holes in the top of my jar with Mama's scissors. That's not something I want you guys to try without an adult beside you. The screen door banged behind me. Banged. That tells me that he rushed so fast that the door slammed behind him. The door banged behind me as I ran from the house. If someone said don't slam it, I wasn't listening. Look, he's even barefoot. I called to my friends in the street, fireflies, but they had come before me with polished jars, and others were coming behind. The sky was darker now. My ears rang with crickets, and my eyes stung from staring too long. So instead of him just saying, I heard crickets, I stared at the fireflies, he said, my ears rang with crickets. So you can just imagine your ears flooding with the sound of crickets. I blinked hard as I watched them. Fireflies, blinking on, blinking off, dipping low, soaring high above my head. making white patterns in the dark. So now I can imagine the lights of the fireflies blinking and moving low and then high again. We ran like crazy, barefoot in the grass. Catch them! Catch them, we cried, grasping at the lights. Suddenly, a voice called out above the others, I caught one! And it was my own. I thrust my hand into the jar and spread it open. The jar glowed like moonlight, and I held it in my hands. I felt a tremble of joy and shouted, I can catch hundreds. Do you think he's really going to catch more than 100 fireflies? It seems like an awful lot. Then we dashed about, waving our hands in the air like nets, catching 2, 10, hundreds of fireflies, thrusting them into jars, waving our hands for more. I wonder if you guys have ever caught fireflies. Then someone called from my house, it's time to come in now. And others called from other houses, and it was over. My friends took jars of fireflies to different homes. I climbed the stairs to my room and set the jar on a table by my bed. Mama kissed me and turned out the light. I caught hundreds, I said. He's exaggerating a little bit, I think. Daddy called from the hallway, see you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile, I called back. I caught hundreds of fireflies. So with him repeating that, I know that he's super excited. In the dark, I watched the fireflies from my bed. They blinked off and on, and the jar glowed like moonlight. But it was not the same. The fireflies beat their wings against the glass and then fell to the bottom and lay there. That sounds like a problem to me. I wonder what he's going to do to solve it. The light in the jar turned yellow, like a flashlight left on too long. Ooh, look at all the fireflies really down at the bottom of the jar like that. I tried to swallow, but something in my throat would not go down. And the light grew dimmer green, like moonlight under water. I shut my eyes and put the pillow over my head. They were my fireflies. He even italicized the word my. I caught them. They made moonlight in my jar, but the jar was nearly dark. I flung off the covers. I went to the window, opened the jar, and aimed at the stars. Fly! Oh, I wonder what made him decide to actually release them. He seems like he was upset here when he put the pillow over his head and shut his eyes tight. But now he doesn't seem so sad. Then the jar began to glow, green, then gold, then white as the moon, and the fireflies poured out into the night. Fireflies blinking on, blinking off, dipping low, soaring high above my head, making circles around the moon like stars dancing. Well, I can imagine stars up in the sky dancing like they're flickering. I held the jar, dark and empty, in my hands. The moonlight and the fireflies swam in my tears, but I could feel myself smiling. So he told us that he was tearful, but inside he was smiling because he knew he did the right thing. So as you're writing today, I want you to make sure you go back and you add to your story with some very different words. Some words that can show emotion, that can be more precise. You might add adverbs like quietly or loudly, bravely, Think of our spelling words this week too. Our spelling words this week will also add to our stories, like slumped down into the chair, yelled out loud. So try to add some awesome words into your story.